I mean, you gave some A Course in Miracle quotes, earlier, and those are really relevant to this too. I mean, the idea of like forgiving yourself, and like really there's nothing to forgive because you already are perfection. I think on like a practical level, we can do this through the kind of meditational or grounding exercise that we did at the beginning. Again, The Joy of Not Thinking, in that book, that last chapter, where I just talk about vibing out. I mean, that's really like vibing out is being non-judgmental towards yourself and recognizing that you're perfect right now. And you can do this. I personally like to spend time on it, like in the sense that like I like to spend 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes on it because I like doing it. And I feel like I become less judgmental of myself the longer I do it. But I know other people who can ground themselves in a similar way or the same way in a couple minutes. So what I'm saying is you can do this whenever you want during the day. If you know what I mean? Like you can, especially when you feel like you're going down a rabbit hole or whatever, you can then just sit down or lie down if you can, or whatever. You don't have however and wherever you feel comfortable, and then just be here. And when you're here, there's nothing wrong. Like literally there's nothing wrong. It's our thinking, our overthinking, that says, oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm doing this wrong. Why is this happening? That's all thinking. That's all a narrative in our head, which ultimately, especially if we're utilizing something like the Absolute Method or the A Course in Miracle quotes you gave earlier, is just the truth. Like, I'm not that familiar with A Course in Miracles, but I know one thing it basically says is like, you're more perfection than you could ever know. So you can't do anything wrong because you are perfection itself, in so much of this spiritual forgiveness, you could say, is just recognizing that you already literally are perfect. Richard Dotz is a really good teacher who talks about this in LOA. Dissolve the Problem. That book, Dissolve the Problem. Also, his book simply called The Magic Feeling, which is basically feeling this way for the sake of just doing it to do it, not to get anything from it or anything, to be super critical. I do think that Dot sometimes makes it sound a little bit easy in the sense of, he attaches manifesting ideas to it a little bit too much, in my opinion, sometimes. But the gist of what he's and I love him. He's a great, great, great LOA teacher. But the gist of what he's saying, I think the real like bones of it is just, you're here right now and you're perfect. And it's just like A Course in Miracles. It's just like H. Emily Cady too, or like the Golden Key. It's just like you're God in like not this, simplistic sense, but like this is God right now. And, I did a seminar last year, and it was, I think I can link to it. It was called like, It Takes No Effort to Be God. Lester Levenson talks about that too. It takes no effort to be here. So there's something wrong, let's say, with your body, with your health, or there's something wrong with a relationship you have, or there's something wrong with your financial situation or your work situation. These are all personal problems. God is impersonal. God's too impersonal to see iniquity. God does not look at your problems as problems. God only sees perfection. If we want to use spiritual language, again, we don't have to, but there's nothing wrong with you. And yeah, I mean, right, you're saying you got into money flows to me easily, and yeah, Lester Levenson, it's all the same. Levenson influenced Dots a lot, there's nothing wrong. Dissolve the Problem, I think, is Richard Dots's most it's very practical. He's talking about like, you start looking at a problem differently. So like you soften your insistence on it, like a health issue. You soften your insistence. Like, well, is it really like this right now, this moment? And then you shift away to this state of like this godly state, right? You could say of like, everything's fine right now. And we just did that. We're doing that right now, right? These exercises are doing that. And then Dot says you can just stay there as long as you want. Stay there. You don't care about there's no problem. The health issue's there, the health issue's not there. Regardless, it's fine. You've transcended the health issue. And this can lead to an external shift as well. Dots would say it often does. But regardless of whether it does or does not, there's no problem in this larger big picture way. I think that makes sense to people on this call. Again, we don't have to use spiritual language or such a spiritual approach. We can just interpret it more psychologically, and you're self-suggesting health to yourself or what have you, or perfection. If you self-suggest perfection to yourself, things are perfect, regardless of a health problem, financial problem, relationship problem. But when we use this more intimate language, this more spiritual language, I think it helps for a lot of us. It's just, if you listen to this call, like on a recording or whatever, or if you're not spiritual, understand that's fine. I'm tossing the God word out because it resonates with me, but practical psychology, if you just are like, I'm okay right now. My body's what it is. My thinking is what it is. I'm okay right now at this moment. Same thing. Be here now, right? You got that, Kate, right? You understand that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty good place to wrap up. Whenever we start doing that kind of, that's again, like my one thing is that like, I really like that. Like, that's my approach personally, but it doesn't, again, mean it has to be your approach.